Because I'm Batman. Sorry. Because I'm Batman. Hello, reformed mythologist Nate Morgan-Locke back again with another episode about franchise storytelling. This one concerns the Caped Crusader, the Dark Knight, the Scowl in the Cowl, Mr. Bruce, call me Batman Wayne. Most of us came to know the Dark Knight through films, cartoons and television programs. But did you know that Batman actually started out as a comic book character? Wild. Okay, so what do we need to remember, kids? Comic books are not films. But they are a bit more like films than other books are, aren't they? Because of the pictures. They have pictures and words. And I've heard that films are often made using things called storyboards, in which you map out all the shots beforehand.
Nice.
However, 5 times married Catholic film director Martin Scorsese does not agree that CBM, that's comic book movies, are real cinema. You may have seen some of his films like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull or Goodfellas, or maybe you've been to one of his weddings. Either way, he wrote this in the New York Times way back in history, back in 2019. In the past 20 years, as we all know, the movie business has changed on all fronts. But the most ominous change has happened stealthily and under cover of night. The gradual but steady elimination of risk. Many films today are perfect products manufactured for immediate consumption. Many of them are well made by teams of talented individuals. All the same, they lack something essential to cinema, the unifying vision of an individual artist. Because of course, the individual artist is the riskiest factor of all. Filmmaker as hero, everybody. But Scorsese's point is to make a distinction between 2 separate fields.
I got 20 acres and you got 43.
There's worldwide audiovisual entertainment and there's cinema.
Mark the difference for me. Mark it, please.
It's worth pointing out that Scorsese has taken particular aim at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. It's fine to say MCU. And here we're talking about Batman, who is a DC property, owned by WB, Detective Comics and Warner Brothers, for those of you taking notes. Someone else who is not quite convinced about the depth and resonance of the superheroes is friend of the show Tom Holland. Here he is being asked about the origins of superheroes by his BFF, Dominic Adventures in Time Sandbrook, on the Rest is History podcast.
Now, I know that you don't really buy all that, do you? Amazingly, for once,
Amazingly,
you don't
I don't.
see them. You don't see them as Christian,
I don't really think it's anything to do with Christianity. I don't
and
really
you don't.
think it's
What
anything
about,
to do with Greek myth or Norse myth or anything like that.
After comparing them with 70s cartoon costume addict Mr. Ben, he goes on.
I mean, I think that basically that's the level that superheroes operate on. These are essentially, it seems to me, vigilante figures.
Yeah.
They're bred of the very specific circumstances of kind of American history,
Which we'll come
attitudes
to,
towards
yeah,
social history, attitudes towards policing, attitudes towards the individual picking up arms to defend the American way of life. Mm-hmm. And basically, these are people who are cosplaying. They are characters that may well, you may well get Thor, you may well get Wonder Woman drawing on the Amazons or whatever. But we're not in the level, say, of Tolkien with his fantasy.
Yeah,
clearly drawing on a deep knowledge of ancient literature, ancient myth, Christian myth, whatever, to amplify his world.
Well, I'm glad that Johnny Tolkien gets a shout out. But I wonder whether we just need to point out that there's an artwork distinction. Comic books aren't epic fantasy novels. Either way, the episode is a splendid conversation about the historical influences of comic book superheroes. The challenge is that Holland and Sandbrook are historians, and so the scope of their study is, of course, the historical antecedents and direct provable influences of the comics. They include insights about the particular cultural neuroses of the times which inspired them. It's honest work, and we're thankful that they take the time to share their discoveries. The trouble is, it's not sacral enough. We'll come back to this, but for us Reformed mythologists, starting as we do with the creedal convictions that God is eternally Father, Son and Spirit, that he's the creator and sustainer of the universe, that this God made man in his image, that in the person of the Son, this God entered human history through the incarnation, suffered, died and was buried, but rose again, ascended into heaven, and that this Jesus will come again to judge the living and the dead. For us, questions about superheroes are inescapably theological, because all comic book writers, cartoonists and filmmakers are made in the image of God and live in his world. Before anyone thinks we've totally jumped the shark repellent, we might also draw a line to the enduring impact of these superheroes. Once we've whittled down to the few from the many, why do so many writers continue to return to superhero characters like Batman? Well, there is that. We should also mention at this point that Batman is technically not a superhero because he has no superpowers. He hasn't been bitten by a radioactive bat. He doesn't hail from another planet, and he's not a mutant. He's just a billionaire with a score to settle and his own R&D department. How does it begin? How does Batman begin? How does Batman Begins begin? We turn our clocks back to 1939. We're in New York City with two men called Bob Kane and Bill Finger. It's important to remember Bill Finger because his name appears less frequently. Bob Kane gets all the plaudits, but Bill Finger was there to lend a hand. Thanks. When Bob Kane first imagined Batman, he gave Bill Finger a ring. Yes, that's right. So Kane was working on a Batman character called The Batman, and Bill Finger knuckled down to assist. Okay, I'll stop now. The very first appearance of the Batman, with a hyphen, comes in 1939 in Detective Comics number 27. But by the time Kane and Finger had thought of his origin story in the spring of 1940, we see the sacred truth. The legend of the Batman, who he is and how he came to be. These 2 pages will explain everything. One night some 15 years ago, Thomas Wayne, his wife and his son were walking home from a movie. "What is this?" "A stick-up, buddy. I'll take that necklace you're wearing, lady." "Leave her alone, you." "Oh, you asked for it." "Thomas, you've killed him. Help! Police! Help!" "This'll shut you up." The boy's eyes are wide with terror and shock as the horrible scene is spread before him. "Father, Mother, dead. They're dead." Days later, a curious and strange scene takes place, and I swear by the spirits of my parents to avenge their deaths by spending the rest of my life warring on all criminals. As the years pass, Bruce Wayne prepares himself for his career. He becomes a master scientist, trains his body to physical perfection until he is able to perform amazing athletic feats. Dad's estate left me wealthy. I am ready, but first I must have a disguise. Criminals are a superstitious, cowardly lot, so my disguise must be able to strike terror into their hearts. I must be a creature of the night, black, terrible, As if in answer, a huge bat flies in the open window. A bat! That's it! It's an omen! I shall become a bat! And thus is born this weird figure of the dark, this avenger of evil, the Batman. What's key here, and with other superhero origins too, is the simplicity of the mythos, the basics of their backstories. There are only a few ingredients, but they're so full of mythic material that they continue to provide us with new dishes. We could turn to the psychological and suggest that it's all in our collective unconscious. Of course we could, but why does Batman work where others don't? We make a return to Holland and Sandbrook.
I mean, Batman is created, a year later? Bob Kane, who's actually, Robert Kahn, another Ashkenazi Jewish writer, Bob Kane and Bill Finger. So that's Detective Comics in March 1939. Now, Batman is slightly different because he
doesn't have a superpower, does he?
No. So he really is the Scarlet Pimpernel in Gotham City. He is a rich, feckless aristocrat, or somebody who appears to be that, i.e. Bruce Wayne. And even the Christopher Nolan films have that element to them.
His parents have been killed by muggers.
Right, and becomes a vigilante. So obviously that's you can see that as reflecting anxieties about crime and all that sort of stuff.
And the huge question.
Yeah.
Why does he dress up as a bat?
Why bats lost away?
Bats frightened me. This time my enemies shared my dread.
Batman has meaning for us because bats have meaning for us. Have you ever thought about why bats exist? The weirdness of bats, the fact that they hang upside down, that they use echolocation, and then of course there's the cultural symbolism of the bat, their gothic connotation. What's more, the nocturnal fear. Why would the late rock opera hero Meat Loaf have 2 glorious albums called Bat Out of Hell? One of which may have been the first album I ever bought. And what's more, the diseased bat was an early origin story for the COVID-19 The diseased bat was an early origin story for the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course it was. Its gigantic wings like a shroud covering the nations, enfolding the earth, blotting out the sun. Now the zoologists might argue that bats are misunderstood creatures, and that most of them are kind and gentle. But this is all irrelevant to the rationale for the origin of the Batman. So we return to those opening 2 pages of the Batman comic #1. Those 12 glorious panels. It tells us why Batman chose the bat as his symbol. The historical or socio-economic explanations that Batman is a right-wing fantasy, a fascistic response to crime, are nowhere to be found. No mention of echolocation or other zoological insights. No, what we actually see is remarkably religious, solidly sacral. A boy kneels by his bedside, hands clasped in prayer, making an oath. He trains both mind and body for the task before him. Years later, as he seeks an identity to symbolize his calling, he ponders the superstitions of the criminal world and is confirmed in his dark disguise by an omen. The bat is where it's at, people. There's no reference anywhere in the text to the rise of fascism, relevant though that may be. There's no mention of the Great Depression, though the economic atmosphere might well have played a role. These things are imported from outside. My dear brothers, Holland and Sandbrook, exegete the text, see what's actually there. We can pontificate about what inspired Kane and Finger to write comic books about fighting crime, but we must also ask Bruce Wayne himself to give an account. The story recorded for us is that the orphan boy Bruce Wayne turned to prayer, that criminals are superstitious, but that the Caped Crusader sees spiritual significance in a bat flying through a window. Let the story stand on its own terms. Kane and Finger wrote a comic about a hero, but as Sandbrook concludes, they didn't know they were coming up with a franchise.
But that's how all of these comic books work these days. Yeah. I mean, they're seen as very kind of lowbrow kids' entertainment, so obviously they're ripping off things left, right and centre. And of course they get away with it, because no one thinks at the time they're creating franchises that will last the 21st century. They just think this is disposable pulp fiction that will be, almost instantly forgotten.
There we go. And look, I got through a whole superhero bit referencing Tom Holland and didn't once mention that he shares the name of Jordan Peterson. You remember him? He argues in his big book Maps of Meaning that the world can be construed as a forum for action or a place of things. There's a broad consensus, agreement, it's fine to say agreement, that the play world, the fictional world of our superhero stories, is the ideal arena in which we tackle questions of how to behave, questions of action. How ought we to live? They can be Aesop's fables, children's picture books, or DC comics. The stories have morals. Cartoons in the 1980s loved this stuff. At the end of the episode came the lesson.
Today we saw people fighting over the Star Child, but in the end, her power brought these people together. It might surprise you to know that all of us have a power like the Star Child's. You can't see it or touch it, but you can feel it. It's called love. When you care deeply about others, when you're kind and gentle, then you're using the power. And that's very special magic indeed. Until later, goodbye for now.
That was, of course, the Sorceress from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, giving us the takeaway message of the Star Child, the power of love. But all cartoons contain messaging. Some will include direct and explanatory, fourth wall breaking imperatives. Instructions, it's fine to say instructions. And others will open the moral capsule, empty out the medicinal powder, and sprinkle it secretly on the Cocoa Pops. It's generally said that the evangelical Christian media tends towards the first approach, and that secular media the second. I'm not convinced that's always true, but here's some beautiful satire from a Lutheran named Hans Feeney.
And don't you remember the 3 things we're supposed to teach kids in every video?
That God loves them, that He has a special plan for their life, and... Wait, what's the third one?
The theological significance of removing the foreskin from the genitals of Israelite males, an act known as circumcision.
What the heck, man? That's such a weird thing to tell kids about.
Now, Jerry, circumcision only seems weird if we don't understand what it means. You see, when God promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations, and that all nations of the earth would be blessed through him, he was promising Abraham that the Messiah, the Savior of the world, would be one of his offspring. Follow me so far?
Sure.
The Messiah would cleanse and purify his people, you see. So to show this, God used circumcision to cleanse and purify the particular bits of Israelite flesh that would be responsible for siring that Messiah. Make sense?
I guess.
Also, just to be clear, by the particular bits of flesh, I mean their penis.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Jimmy.
Genius. It's not a question of whether our cartoons will have messaging, it's a question of what that messaging will be. Keep calm and carry on. Be kind. Don't do drugs. Stop eating crisps in bed. Sometimes the messaging is given in the form of genuine moral dilemmas. Even then, the messaging is clear. It shows the writer's conviction that personal ethical reflection is important. The interplay of these dilemmas with the resolution, or lack of, in the plot tells us whether the writers believe such questions have substantial answers. That said, there are of course some characters and story worlds which lend themselves to the exploration of ethical questions and moral dilemmas more than others. And the story of billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne has been a lightning rod for questions of an ethical nature. In fact, Batman is especially curious because he has a moral conviction that while he'll war against criminals, he shouldn't kill them, because that would make him as bad as they are. Why won't Batman kill the Joker? This is the opening chapter in Batman and Philosophy, a collection of essays about the dark night of the soul. Nice. Like what you did there. Published in 2008, Mark White, editor of the collection, says that he will consider the ethics of killing to prevent future killings. Exactly the problem Batman faces when he balances his personal moral code against the countless lives that he could save. He does this through a very famous philosophical thought experiment, the trolley problem. There is a trolley that cannot be stopped, hurtling along the track and about to kill 5 people who, for whatever reason, cannot get out of the way. A bystander, by pulling a lever, has the power to divert the trolley onto a different track, where it will kill only one person, who also, for whatever reason, can't get out of the way. The question is, should the bystander pull the lever? Just to be clear, this is trolley used in the American sense rather than the UK sense. It would be pretty hard to kill anyone with a supermarket trolley. How would that even work? If you have an answer, please leave a comment below, and we can recommend a good counsellor to help you with your violent imagination. Back to the actual trolley problem. The ethical dilemma is clear. Do nothing and let 5 people die, or intervene and only one person dies, but their blood is on your hands. The existential sitcom The Good Place sets up the trolley problem in very literal terms. Here's Chidi making his decision.
Now, the whole point is to play out the scenario in real time.
Quick, Chidi, what's your decision?
Okay, I can do this. I am choosing to switch tracks, so that way I only kill one person. Oh, forgot to tell you, this is the scenario where you actually know one of the people. It's your friend Henry there.
Chidi! How are you, mate?
Henry, move!
Oh, nice trolley.
Move out of the way!
I can't, Cheaty. My boots are stuck in the tracks.
Henry, move!
Anyway,
The trolley problem options are generally said to be governed by two different ethical approaches, the utilitarian and the deontological. The first is about the outcomes. The lives in this scenario have equal value. 5 lives are lost by not pulling the lever, only 1 life is lost by pulling it. It's simple maths. More life, more happiness. The second option, the option not to pull the lever, is said to be agent-specific, concerned less with the outcome than the moral responsibility of the particular bystander. What is their particular duty? Arguably, franchise storytelling, built around characters, emphasizes agent-specific responses, and utilitarians tend to be the bad guys. The external outcomes matter, of course, but in a story, the hero's internal struggle, agent-specific, matters too, especially in Batman. Stories are about characters in relationship with hopes and desires. Stories get into specifics. When did this happen? Why are the 5 people unable to get clear of the track? Who is the individual on the other one? What happens internally for the bystander after the event? What are the consequences of their decision beyond the deaths of the 5 or the 1? Would it be possible to spam the lever multiple times to derail the trolley? Button mashing for the win! Almost all these questions are considered irrelevant for the trolley problem, because the aim is not to tell a story, but to pinpoint the philosophical method. The abstract philosophical dilemma is a luxury storytellers cannot afford, because the details matter. The audience don't only want to see the specific outcome of whether the 5 or the 1 were killed, but to find out what other impact it has on the characters. What were the unforeseen consequences? How was the bystander driven mad by their decision? Did the 5 ever know how close they were to death? And abstract philosophy is not a luxury this world affords either. We live in reality, the place that we actually live in. It's not a place of things or a forum for action only, but a world with a priori value and meaning. It's not a world without meaning and truth. It's a world which God has created and in which God has acted. But how has he acted within it? Great question. Hold on to it while we think about how The Good Place resolved the trolley problem.
I just solved the trolley problem.
It's really great, but I don't think now's the time.
See, the trolley problem forces you to choose between 2 versions of letting other people die, and the actual solution is very simple. Sacrifice yourself.
What does that mean?
Step away from the portal!
Goodbye, Andrew.
No, wait!
Self-sacrifice is the solution. I wonder whatever gave us that idea.
Let me get this straight. You think that your client, one of the wealthiest, most powerful men in the world, is secretly a vigilante who spends his nights beating criminals to a pulp with his bare hands? And your plan is to blackmail this person? Good luck.
Ooh, don't mess with Gotham's vengeance.
Well, into the soup? Why not? It's a shore break surf, not too long a paddle to the peak.
Right. It seems Batman is evergreen. We've had dark and scary Batman depictions like this, and then campy Batman. In the 80s, he got tough and more violent and darker with Frank Miller. But the 80s was followed by the Schumachers of the 90s, which was followed by the Nolan Batman trilogy of no-nonsense thriller Batman. We've got the animated films. Under the Red Hood took the ethical questions of Batman's no-kill-the-Joker policy and brought them to the forefront. I've tried to watch Batman vs Superman, but it was exhausting. Tragically, Robert Pattinson's shift in the cowl in 2022's The Batman is less than the sum of its parts. My faith in the joy of Batman was actually revived with the utterly bonkers 2018 animated film Batman Ninja. in which, I kid you not, Batman and his friends have to summon Gorilla Groot's army of monkeys to fight against the Japanese Edo fortress turned giant Joker Voltron. It's epic. But wait, there's more. Before long, the hundreds of monkeys are joined by thousands of bats to make the mighty Bat God.
Behold, the mighty Bat God before us.
You can't blackmail the monkey Bat God, man, Coleman Reese. He doesn't just beat criminals to a pulp, he's made of bats and monkeys. So all these different Batmans, what's the best? Well, it's this one.
Batman, what are you doing? You're completely outnumbered here. Are you nuts?
You want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts. Because I just wrote a song about how I'm going to kick all your butts.
Stop him before he starts singing!
Yes, the Lego Batman is the best Batman film. Will Arnett's Batman kickflips every other Batman in the face. He's more classy than Keaton, more killer than Kilmer, more clown than Clooney, better than Bale, more arty than Affleck, and more punk than Pattinson. Okay, so maybe it's a little ironically detached. Maybe it lacks the sincerity that Batman needs. But it does have the radical ethical discovery that if you want to make the world a better place, you need to take a look at yourself and make a change. Please remember, media consumption is optional. You are under no obligation to read these comics, watch these films, or drive these Batmobiles. I'm Reformed mythologist Nate Morganlock. I'm glad you were here.